Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to the end of the road in Michigan, where we bring you the forgotten stories and fierce trials that shaped the Great Lakes state. Today, we turn back to a searing September day in 1881, when the skies over Michigan's thumb turned black, and a wall of fire swallowed entire towns whole. At the center of this catastrophe stood Parisville, a quiet farming village of Polish immigrants caught off guard by nature's full fury. This isn't just a story of destruction, it's a story of faith, survival, and the strange miracles that defied the flames. From a lone cow that wandered in from the woods to a wooden cross left standing amid the ashes, Parisville's fight for survival became legend. Join us as we retrace the paths of those who lived and those who didn't through Michigan's deadliest firestorm and explore how this tiny thumb community rose again from the rubble. This is Inferno at Parisville, a story of loss, endurance, and quiet triumph at the edge of the road in Michigan. In the early morning of September 5, 1881, the fields around Parisville lay quiet under a clear blue sky. But something was amiss. All summer long, there had been no rain, and even the big maples had grown brittle in the drought. Parisville, a tiny farming village in Michigan's thumb, had grown up over the last 25 years under the shadow of the forest, clearing timber mile by mile. Its Polish immigrant families had tilled the sandy soil and built a chapel to the Virgin Mary that still overlooked the crossroads. By noon on that Labor Day, the air above Paris Township was dark. Rancher August Pruss and his neighbors thought a thunderstorm might be brewing until the wind shifted. A furious gale from the southwest carried sparks and embers over the horizon. Suddenly, at 2:30 p.m., a wall of fire appeared on the ridgeline to the west. Witnesses later described it as a solid wall of flame, 50 or 100 feet high, racing across the countryside. The sky turned black at noon, and it felt like midnight before the Inferno reached town. Within minutes, the conflagration was upon them. Houses went up in flames, crops ignited, and barns became torches. At Parisville's western edge stood a modest hotel and the small convent run by Polish nuns. One of those nuns later wrote home, "We smelled smoke." Wind carried sparks through the treetops, setting everything around us ablaze. Flames surrounded our hotel. There was no escape. She clutched an icon of Our Lady as she raced inside. We prayed. For 4 hours the fire roared, she wrote. When at last silence fell and they dared to step outside again, the world was buried in ash. Every building on that side of town lay smoldering, charred bodies of man and beast lay scattered in the fields. The fire did not spare nearly anything. Reports filed afterward noted that 446 structures in Paris Township were completely destroyed, more than in any other county in the thumb. Contemporary newspapers said that more than 500 people across the region perished, and over 1,500 were left homeless. Families who had lived there for decades were reduced to ruins in a single afternoon. One grieving farmer later told a reporter, "I opened the back door to escape the flames, but the fire crept around behind me. I could do nothing but run from it." In Parisville, men and women grabbed children and livestock and fled into the swamps. Those who were too slow were overtaken by the heat and suffocated in the smoke. Yet, amid the horror, some truly astonishing survivals occurred. When the midday inferno swept through, a few places inexplicably remained untouched. Northeast of the burned village center, the fire split and swirled. In one area, 7 homes clustered around the parish church stood as if untouched, while the fields and woods around them turned to charcoal. On a neighboring farm, a stack of cut hay survived intact, even though the farm's house and barn were entirely consumed by flames. These odd miracles gave hope to the survivors. 20 miles away, long after the fire had passed, a lone brown cow wandered stumbling into Parisville through the burning trees. The frightened but starving settlers welcomed the animal, grateful for the milk it provided when all else was gone. Even more miraculous, one Parisville family discovered that a sacred painting of the Virgin Mary, which they had nailed to their porch, remained utterly unharmed. The porch and the countryside around it were ashes, but the little icon stood unscathed. Down at St. Mary's Church, the crucifix on the steeple remained standing, its figure of Christ unscathed, as the whole church and graveyard burned around it. Parisville's survivors took these events as signs. There were 4 miracles here after the big 1881 fire. We sure did, historian Mike Ulfig would say, recalling the stories he'd heard from those who lived through it. He recounted how the village gathered what little comfort they could from these unexplainable survivals. The stray cow gave strength. The untouched holy images gave faith. When the wind finally died and help arrived, Parisville resembled a battle zone. Bodies were buried under a donated oak tree behind the church. Aid came from neighboring towns, and banded together, the community began to rebuild. It was a daunting task, but the people of Parisville were determined. Within a few years, fields were replanted and barns re-raised. Contemporary accounts indicate that Paris Township was again flourishing by the 1890s. An 1888 atlas proudly listed Paris as one of the most productive townships in the Thumb, despite the devastation. Many credited the fire with ironically renewing the soil. Historian Rosentreter noted that the ashes left behind fertile soil, making the Thumb a breadbasket for Michigan for generations. In the decades that followed, the story of September 1881 became part of Parisville lore. The community erected new stones and built a new church, and life went on. However, the memory lived on as well. Descendants told and retold the tale of that fiery day. In 2004, for Parisville's 150th anniversary, locals gathered at St. Mary's to share stories of the fire. More recently, scholars have delved into the history. In 2019, Charles Chase published Parisville/Paris Township, the oldest Polish settlement in Michigan, chronicling the very founding of the village, and in the summer of 2021, the Polish Genealogical Society of Michigan installed a roadside plaque at Parisville's corner, commemorating the town's Polish pioneers. At that dedication, a speaker reminded the crowd that these hardy settlers had to suffer through devastating fires in 1871 and 1881 to build their community. Today, if you drive through Parisville, it is a quiet pastoral crossroads. But every so often, the wind shifts to the southwest, and local elders say they recall the day the sky turned black. They remember those 4 miracles and the frightened eyes of neighbors scrambling for safety. The courage of those who survived has become part of Michigan's story, a testament that even when a raging fire takes everything, the human spirit and a little bit of luck can bring a town back from the ashes. The Great Fire of 1881 may have changed Parisville forever, but it never forgot the people who lived through it. And so, Parisville's story stands as a poignant chapter in Michigan's history. A moment when fire swept through the Thumb, leaving behind both devastation and unexpected signs of hope. More than 140 years later, the fields are green again, the town rebuilt, and the stories of that terrible day continue to echo through generations. They remind us that even in the face of overwhelming loss, the human spirit, and sometimes a little luck, can carry a community forward. Thank you for joining us on the End of the Road in Michigan. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with others who love Michigan history. Until next time, keep an eye on the horizon, because every road has a story, and some of them are unforgettable.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.